also, and I'm very glad that I'm able to learn quite a bit about the innovative applications of Bayesian statistics, not only in forecasting, but in a variety of applications ranging from agricultural economics to financial economics and so on. Now, for this purpose of this session is to how to introduce an optional course in Bayesian econometrics at the master's level in India. In a brief background, when the UGC Curriculum Committee in Economics met sometime 87-88, and we prepared the syllabus in economics, we framed some general rules that the weight for a theory and quantitative tools should be somewhere between 25% to 50% of the total content, depending on the university. Some of them more quantitative, some of them less quantitative. And also we agreed that the quantitative techniques, normally mathematical methods and statistical methods, at least 2 courses out of 10, but it can go as much as 4 or 5, depending on the place like Delhi School or ISI or some place like that. At that time when we prepared this syllabus, we discussed about the introducing Bayesian econometrics as a part of the econometric methods course. But at that time, we decided that we should wait for some more time, because many of us felt that to apply Bayesian tools, we need a good amount of computer skills. Particularly, we must know how to integrate the posterior distributions to find the marginal distribution and so on. Therefore, at that time, we thought that it would not be feasible to introduce in a college or a university department, except perhaps in ISI, Delhi School, and a few universities. Now, because of the availability of computer, the numerical integration is not a problem. And also, we have listened to the distinguished speakers, particularly Professor Zellner's survey article, telling about the applications of Bayesian econometrics in a variety of areas. I think it's the right time for us to apply these techniques. Therefore, I would like your comments. I'm organizing in 3 parts. First, the present status in economics, statistics, and management departments. And we will listen to the experts. And also, we would like to learn from you whether there is any such course or a part of a course, and how do we go about that. Second part, we want to know suggestions about how do you design the course. What should be the prerequisites? What should be the duration? What should be the course contents? And the third part, what are the preparatory steps you must take in order to implement the course? Here, my own opinion is that most of the boards of studies at the university level, they will not allow a new curriculum or new course unless you have good textbooks. And second problem in Indian case is that you must also train the teachers. Teacher training must precede the introduction of a course because of the shortage of availability of teachers. There are preparation of textbooks, reading materials, training course. And also, to motivate the students to take the course, we must provide opportunities, not only in the industry and other things, but also we must have some forum. In this case, we can make use of the Indian Econometric Society, the Statistical Association, and other agencies to organize special sessions in Bayesian econometrics. It's not a problem at all. Then also, ultimately, everything depends on funds. Then we have to tap the sources like UGC, Department of Statistics, CSO, Reserve Bank, Planning Commission, Indian Econometric Society, and also funds from the international sources. Now, first, let me start with the present status of Bayesian econometrics in India. As I mentioned before, as far as I know, there's no university department, economics department, having a paper in Bayesian econometrics. What we have is very little of Bayes theorem and so on, nothing beyond that. And Professor Bansal told me that only in Delhi University Statistics Department they introduced Bayesian econometrics statistics very recently. Therefore, first I would request our experts panel, distinguished panel of experts, say 5 minutes, your own experiences introducing Bayesian statistics, econometrics in your university system or other places which you know. So so that we can learn from experience. I think you can start with Professor Bonsai.
Thank you, Professor. I started my Bayesian activity way back in 75, 76. And at that time, I didn't have many books to look into. Professor Zellner's book was there, but I didn't know much about it. Box and Trio book was there, and Griffiths book. These are the kind of books which I had, and I started doing some work. In 1980, we introduced Bayesian inference as an optional paper at the MPhil level. That's a pre-PhD program. And then whenever I got some opportunity to teach the inference paper at the MSc level, I started teaching Berger's book and kind of books. Only in 94, when we revised our syllabus for the MSc courses, I introduced the optional paper in Bayesian inference. And you'll be surprised that in 99, when we revised the honors statistics syllabus, we introduced elementary ideas of Bayesian inference for the undergraduates. Now, the kind of topics which I thought were that they should be able to cover in about 8 to 10 lectures the basic ideas in inference. For example, how the Bayesian Bayes theorem can be converted into the inference problem as given in, say, Big Barnett's book. And then talk about some standard posteriors using Jeffreys priors and the conjugate priors, just the mechanical part, not getting into the philosophy and arguments there. And then, look at the posterior distribution and see how confidence intervals or credible intervals or like Bayes factor, posterior odds could be computed, and that kind of stuff. So introduce the teachers. I gave a series of 6 lectures last April and told them, say, followed like, for example, P.M. Lee's book. That's a good book to start with. And I told them, this is the kind of material which you can do. And we still have 2 years before our students learn Bayesian. It will start in 2001, the 3rd year. And by that time, I hope to give them another series of 6 or 8 lectures so that they know exactly what is to be done. Now, as far as my interests are concerned, I teach econometrics paper in my own department. It's a 2.5 hours, 2-semester course. And we teach some stationary time series in that course and some econometrics. So I start, for example, with distributed lag models and kind of things, simultaneous equation models, little bit of it, little bit of forecasting. But in last change, I introduced Bayesian regression analysis, where I took simple cases and showed how Bayes' theorem could be used in regression analysis. So it takes about 8 to 10 lectures to give them the basic idea of what's happening. And this is what I'm doing, and I think I'm quite happy with the way things are going. It will take some more time to get adjusted. But as far as the students are concerned, obviously you have to convince them that it's something you should learn.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm a bit embarrassed to say we don't have any Bayesian statistics courses at my university. In fact, at the undergraduate level, we do not have very many students specialising in econometrics at all. And I do have currently 3 PhD students who are using Bayesian techniques, and over the last 10 years I have had a series of PhD students doing Bayesian PhDs. And our PhD program is such that it's not like I'm not sure what they do in India, but I'm familiar with the US system where there's coursework and prelim exams and you write a thesis. But in Australia we just have a thesis, and incoming students who we think need to do perhaps some undergraduate courses that need a bit more background, we can direct them into those courses, but in general there's no sort of formal coursework in our PhD program. Now, that does cause some problems. That does mean that I can get some students into our PhD program that I'm encouraging to do Bayesian work, that may have perhaps not as good a background as they should to be able to do this work. And what I find in terms of the students we get, what is lacking is students don't really appreciate the idea of a subjective distribution to represent uncertainty about a parameter or a quantity. And that in fact is why that was the first paragraph in the first talk I gave here, because it's my experience that that is frequently lost. And so I think, to me, that's number one point that's got to be emphasised, and in any prerequisites or in the particular course it's taught. Secondly, I think that a lot of the students I get initially probably don't really understand the difference between conditional and marginal distributions. And if you're going to talk about Bayes' theorem, that makes it tough. And so I think you need to, well, that really depends on the mathematical background, but I think you need to have a background in conditional and marginal distributions. You need to do lots of examples and integrate things out and get a real feel for that. And you need to do it with a subjective probability flavour, or at least some of the time. Now, the way I try and get my PhD students, I guess, up to standard, is I'll take 2 or 3 students, sit them in a room for 2 hours and just talk to them and write things on the board, and then tell them to go away and read certain books. And then I hope that sort of eventually catches on. I also feel what's important is lots of applications, lots of computing. I think you need more than just deriving posteriors and saying, well, that's the posterior. I think you need to put some numbers in there, you need to draw pictures, you need to be using software to do all that kind of stuff. And so I haven't sort of thought through in my head how I would actually structure a unit. I suppose I would take various econometric topics, but I would go over again and again with those topics the Markov chain Monte Carlo techniques that can be used to get posteriors and that kind of thing. Textbooks. I think a good book on Bayesian statistics, but not necessarily econometrics, is the book by Gelman and Carlin and Rubin and somebody else, I forget now, called Bayesian Data Analysis. I think that's a well-written book. It's certainly a graduate level book, but it covers a lot of the concepts, and it explains them reasonably briefly and to the point. And in terms of a book on applications, again, statistics though, not econometrics. So I think there's a need for an econometrics book. It is a book edited by Spiegelhalter and others called Markov Chain Monte Carlo in Practice. And that has a lot of nice little applications. They're not quite the models we deal with in econometrics, but a lot of our econometric models have some of the same characteristics.
Thank you.
That's probably all I can think of.
Oh boy, I feel pretty ignorant about the whole topic, because even though I went through the program here in India 30 years ago now, so essentially things have changed over time. Not knowing if the current leading institutions in India offer course in Bayesian statistics and Bayesian econometrics, at least Bayesian statistics first. If you don't have that, you really can't teach a Bayesian econometrics course, afterwards. As a course which has stat and econometrics and everything else in one course, and I don't have time for doing that. So I believe one way to really get this going will be to make sure ISIs of the world and IITs and the universities and the key places have a course in place in their program. Because in the master's program, you'll get students from these places, all the key universities, whatever they are. I'm not going to name them. I don't even know them. Okay. So if they have some kind of training at the undergrad level, at least one course in Bayesian statistics, there's no point doing 2 weeks of Bayesian econometrics in any course. They won't really get much out of that one. That's how I feel about it. Now, can you do it or not? Well, if ISI and Delhi School of Economics and 10 more universities decide that this is something is modern statistics, decision making, and economics, it has to be done, then others will follow. If it's not being in the leading institutions, other places will not even worry about it. So, question I have: do we have a Bayesian stat course at ISI in Calcutta? Anybody knows about that?
No, I don't think we don't.
And unless ISI has a course in that area, I mean, remember ISI is followed as a model by a lot of other universities, okay? And if ISI doesn't have something like that, it will be very difficult to convince the other universities, which usually call for what? They have a program in master's, statistics. They'll call experimental experts from different places to come by and suggest what do we do, how do we revise our curriculum. That's how things work, right? And panels of experts come from leading institutions. And if they don't have that kind of course, then I don't anticipate they will recommend that you guys should have it even though we don't have it.
But
That's the worry I have.
I'd like to add
That's the
one more
problem I
point.
have.
We formed a kind of a Bayesian group in one of the meetings in 1997. And we had a meeting in BHU, in National University. And JKG was the patron of our activity. And we decided at that point that what should be the syllabus for Bayesian statistics course. And so Kunte, Sudhakar Kunte and these people also got involved.
Good. Yeah.
And we emailed and discussed things, and we came up with some kind of a syllabus in 99 January meeting, which held in Amravati. So we have some kind of write-up. What we decided was that this is a kind of a guideline. So if somebody wants to follow, he can follow that guideline. But in case, say for example, I'm at Delhi University, I'm interested in a particular kind of activity, I can develop my course in that line.
Along that lines.
So this is the basic understanding which we had in that meeting.
Let me just add to
Yeah.
it. We do have an optional paper called Bayesian Econometrics in our Masters of Statistics and Quantitative Economics program,
Yeah.
which started 3 years ago at ISI. It's an optional paper, but of course, I think we only got 2 students once, which I got to teach. So but of course, we really need to have it at the undergraduate level so that they will opt for it. So that we don't have it. And JKG in the Bayesian newsletter did write about it, that he felt very sorry that he could not get the ISI to introduce a course. Am I right? I think Padma Vaisya looks after our course, who has the entire B-Stat and M-Stat program sheet, and Mohan would know about it.
First, I don't know your system too well, so I can't generalize about what you should do. It's hard enough to know what we should do in the U.S. Let me tell you, in the early 60s, I didn't ask anybody. I just proposed a course in Bayesian econometrics in the Department of Economics at the University of Wisconsin. The chairman says, if you want to teach it, go teach it. So, as I say, in Chicago, that's the attitude. You want to teach a new course? Try it out. See if it works. So, and conditions in Chicago and other places are quite different. So if you try to get a standardized course for different places, different conditions, different students, it probably won't work. So in Chicago, we don't define what a person teaches. We let them teach, and then each quarter there's a student evaluation survey. The students evaluate the course, and the evaluation surveys are made public. If the students are unhappy with the course, the dean calls the person in and tells them, you better shape up your course or else. So this administrative part is very important. Now, if you allow people to propose new courses, a good thing to do, I think, would be to contact people who are giving Bayesian courses and get their reading lists, get their input. Now, in the U.S., there are many people in Chicago doing Bayesian statistics courses, Bayesian econometrics courses at the doctoral and master's level, at Duke, at Purdue, at Berkeley. David Blackwell at Berkeley, the home of frequentist statistics. He gave a Bayesian introductory course.
So that was David Blackwell.
David Blackwell. He used Berry's textbook. Don Berry from Duke has an introductory textbook. It's a very good book.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So write to Berry and get his views on this. He'd love to have more of his books sold in India. Barlow at Berkeley has a text on engineering reliability. Then the text that were mentioned earlier by Gelman et al., beautiful book. There's another book edited by Berry, Challoner, and Gavecki that I put on the reading list, the list of references in my first talk. Bayesian analysis in econometrics, in statistics and econometrics. About 30 or 40 papers on topics at the cutting edge of research, Bayesian research. So you get a lovely set of papers there. And when I go to Berkeley after this visit, I'm going to use Gelman's book, this book edited by Barry Challoner and Gavecki, and of course my book too. But let me add it's very important not to be too doctrinaire. You want to run the Bayesian approach against other approaches. Now, I've found over the years, students come in supposedly after taking statistics courses, economic statistics courses. They don't know much about statistics. Either the frequentist concepts don't have a great impact on them, or they don't know about the power of a test. Define a prediction interval. Suppose a 95 prediction interval for the rate of growth of GDP extends from 3% to 5%. Define that for me. About 95% of the students can't define a non-Bayesian prediction interval. So the thing to do, and I've done it, is to compare the Bayesian approach with alternative approaches. Run one approach against the other on very important, relevant, practical problems. So you have problems like forecasting, problems like how to play golf, problems like regression analysis, predicting the relationship between executions and murder rates. Oh, that's an exciting regression to run. And a number of other areas of business, marketing problems, sales forecasting, what model for introducing new products, a number of interesting testing problems. All these problems can be handled by comparing the Bayesian approach against the non-Bayesian approach. Now, over the years, I've had data sets from the most famous studies in econometrics in memory. And I've always required them to take the data set from a study by Tobin on the demand for food, or Friedman, where he's running the quantity theory against the Keynesian theory. There's two simple regressions, money multiplier model versus the Keynesian autonomous spending multiplier model. And critique the author's handling of the problem and show how you can do that problem from a Bayesian point of view. Then compare the results. This has led to student papers. I think over the last few years, about 4 student papers got published in the literature. They found new things about these data sets that the authors didn't know about, outliers, this and that. So getting the students on the computer to reanalyze these famous data sets and having them critique Nobel Prize winners like Milton Friedman, James Tobin, and others, Vidigliani. You find the studies done 20 years ago need a lot of improvement. And this makes the students indeed very confident when they're criticizing a Nobel Prize winner. And they say, how could he be so dumb? Well, so this interaction between theory and application and clarifying the concepts for the students. Now, just this morning we heard a lecture in which the statement was made, all models are false. What does that mean? False, a false model. Does that mean probability 0 on the model? Well, what does it mean, a false model? Your degree of belief in the model as measured by a numerical probability is 0? I don't know if that was the meaning of the statement. But you have to get into the definitions of probability. Most students come into the course all mixed up. They don't know whether they're using a frequency definition, long-run frequency, axiomatic definition, Fisher hypothetical infinite population definition, degree of reasonable belief definition, betting definition. Most of them are all mixed up on the definition of probability. Now, if you're mixed up on the definition of probability, you're mixed up on everything. All models are false. So getting key items well defined, a little of philosophy and science to begin with, not too much, but enough to know probabilities, what probabilities on models mean, what is probability, testing procedures, a little on the philosophy of science leading into the main course. And above all, too, student evaluations of the courses. Otherwise, nobody knows what's going on in the courses. To have the students evaluate the courses, answering a well-designed survey provides information for the instructor, information for the dean, etc. If you have a successful course, this Bayesian approach will take over the whole field. But if you hit a bad course, people are not going to pursue the Bayesian approach. So it's very good to know how well the course is being given, what the student reactions are, in an effort to improve the courses continuously. I think I've said enough. You're next.
Picking up from where Professor Zellner left off, the situation, as I understand, in Indian universities is, for that matter, ISI or IIT, is vastly different from what it is at Chicago or Wisconsin. So it's not very clear how to go about introducing these courses. But people like Professor Warman, Professor Venkatramana, and Professor Khan can shed some light on how the board of studies operate and how new courses are introduced and so on and so forth. So that will come up in a few minutes. Now, my experience is that people who teach the courses are as important as the course itself. Like in many Indian universities and colleges, there is this real problem, as indicated by many, which is that pure mathematicians and engineers end up teaching statistics, and they don't give any motivation whatsoever, and students end up getting nothing. And if that's the situation, then there is no point in introducing very ambitious courses. So one should seriously think about that problem. The other problem is very practical. It's the availability of textbooks. There are very good books available. These are foreign books, very expensive for Indian students and teachers. Except for these rich libraries, these are not affordable. So some people have to go about writing books, at least, which will be available at affordable rates to Indian students and teachers. So there are these various different practical issues that have to be addressed before a good beginning can be made.
I should just inform that S.K. Sinha has written a book which is published in India on Bayesian estimation. And I've gone through the book. The only difficulty with that book is that it doesn't give the theory, it gives lots of examples, but the examples are basically based on his reliability experience. But it's a book which somebody can read and use it for some examples.
Yeah, thank you very much. When I started our courses to teach in Basel, so we have mainly economic students, and we have to design undergraduate or introductory courses, which are 4 courses over 4 semesters, and then we have courses in the upper level, which is essentially econometrics. And in the first year of the introductory course, I'm not touching Bayesian methods, except I explain what the subjective probabilities are, and maybe the Bayes theorem in odds ratios, but that's the maximum I think you can ask for. And then I started in the second year when you introduce estimation and simple tests to present Bayesian alternatives. So simple confidence intervals for the beta binomial and the normal gamma model and the regression model, and give together some simple base formulas like Bayesian p-values or the base factors, which we can find in the book by Jeffries, and then say, well, here's the base factor you can calculate, and if you don't like the p-value, here is a simple method how to calculate from the base factor posterior probability for the hypothesis you are testing. So the experience with the students is a mixed one. Unfortunately, many students end up very confused. Even we have textbooks and explaining that and so on, they ask, why are there two types of tests? You're the expert. You should tell us what is the best thing to do. Why I should decide what the data is about. And so this creates a little bit of problems, and only the best students take up the ideas that it is not so easy to do empirical work. So this is my experience when I started some kind of dual approach, even in the introduction. You say there's not one statistical methodology, there are at least two schools around, and if you think hard enough, then you find out that the Bayesian school or the subjective school might be the one which doesn't contradict or is more coherent. But this is a very abstract justification, and it's difficult to understand for introductory students who usually try to forget everything what they learn about statistics within 1 year altogether. In the upper level, so we teach econometrics, and I followed the following idea that econometrics consists of theoretical econometrics and applied econometrics. So there's a 1 year course of theoretical econometrics, and we use books like Gujarati, famous Indian textbook, and the people like it.
Griffiths?
You can do it better than
So Gujarati, everybody knows, it's not written in Gujarati. So you can read it in English, even though there's in German and all. But then we have a practical course, which people should do some simple econometrics or time series work, and then I teach a special course every other year, which is on special topics, and usually this is Bayesian statistics. And then I take our package, what we developed, the Basel package, and I've seen that now we try to implement it here as well. So I tell the people it would be good to pick up some topic, like for a diploma, and then you can run classical econometrics, like it is done in EViews. This is a very popular package, or other packages, or S+ what we're using. Or you use our package and try to compare it. And this was quite successful, that we could attract some good students looking deeper into these Bayesian methods by using these methods, and find out, well, they seem to work better than if you like to estimate, for instance, an arch model by classical methods. You end up very often with very incredible results, even coefficients giving negative variances, and not to say negative, not positive matrices. So, and we also try to do some kind of software, simple software development for the introductory courses. And I had one student who once developed a package MacBase. That was for Macintosh computers, but unfortunately Macintosh is not so popular, so we have to give up. But there are other packages like First Base, I think by Tony O'Hagan, which offer some introductory statistical simple tests from a Bayesian point of view. So this is essentially what we are using, and then we have some PhD students or postgraduate who work in certain research topics like econometrics, financial econometrics, and try to find out how to use special econometric approaches for very sophisticated modeling like portfolio selection and so on. That's my opinion.
The Board of Studies is the ultimate authority for deciding the curriculum. They can take part of it or whole of it or modify it. But there are some exceptions. There are some relatively well-endowed institutions like IIMs, IITs, ISI, and some of the universities where we have introduced what we call, just like the American system, credit-based internal assessment system, where the teachers have the option to have their own syllabus. Whereas most of the universities, I think today, the exams, the question papers are set outside, valuation down by outside. Therefore, they need a fixed pattern of syllabus. But as the IIT, IIM, ISI, and some of the universities, now they have gone for the American type of internal assessment system with 100%, where the teacher has a lot of choice. Now, I request Professor Rao to.
Okay, I don't have much experience in Bayesian, but we do have a statistics course in IIM required for all the postgraduate program students. And also we have started a new program, Software and Enterprise Management. There also statistics course is required. As part of the statistics course, we do cover a little bit on Bayesian subjective probabilities and how to calculate posterior probabilities. That always seems to go well. Students do like that. But beyond that, we don't have much. But my experience has been that you teach statistics, and I just could help here Professor Zellner when he says people have different notions, and they don't really seem to understand probability, because the question always asks, you do all this, especially in executive programs, you do all this analysis, then how come some investment fails? What's the notion of probability of failure or cash flows? They think that if you do all this, somehow everything must go, you must be 100% successful. There's no notion of being, having some failure. And of course, my famous story that I tell them is, if you don't make any decisions, then you will never be wrong. And also, what I heard is that when Alfred Sloan retired from after distinguished career in General Motors, a reporter asked him, in your long distinguished career, can you tell me, one mistake you made, one wrong decision you made? And Alfred Sloan's reply was, my dear friend, I don't want to keep you up all night by telling you all the mistakes or the decisions I made. This notion of, decisions that go wrong, or, analyzing that, they think that if you do this probabilistic analysis, somehow you must be correct all the time or something. And that they don't seem to understand. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, of course, our students, they don't have, they are only for 2 years, and they have a lot of other courses to take. Some do take, our doctoral level students do take courses in econometrics and so on, but not much of Bayesian approach is covered. It's all right.
And next, some of the faculty members here to.
My name is Ravi Kiran. I'm working as a fixed income analyst at SBI Guilds, which is a primary dealer in the Indian government securities market. Now, I am basically an engineer MBA, so I don't really have a formal background in statistics. So I would really love it if such workshop would have a more applied focus, because it's very difficult for us to appreciate the hardcore theory that goes into it, because I don't have a background in this. Now, you're saying that it has a lot of applications in portfolio management. I would really love to know more about it.
Did you run off that paper?
Well, yes, I have a copy. I'll pass it on.
Give him a copy of the
That would be
paper.
lovely.
We will have to organize a workshop on Bayesian methods for
Finance.
portfolio management.
Maybe a separate session on Bayesian methods, applications of that in finance.
Financial economics.
The motivation and then the application, I think that's the way we have to go.
That's right.
I
And
appreciate it.
perhaps more to do with software packages also. I went to Professor Polasek's website. Bit of a language problem, but I could sort out because I think it was in German. I
You can switch off.
Yeah, I couldn't find out where that icon was. Anyway, I could make out. There are a couple of papers on applications to financial econometrics, exchange rates and stock returns. But it had some references to a package called Bayesian, I think, which you're referring to. Is it available over the net or it is available?
Yes.
You try it on.
Okay.
Tomorrow perhaps you will emphasize that, yes, he actually developed it for this workshop.
Okay. Because at our workplace we have packages for frequentist approaches, like we have packages like EViews, but we have nothing for Bayesian econometrics. If we don't have packages like this, we would have to develop it in-house. So rather than reinventing the wheel,
But there's Arnold's package and
Yes,
there's
I-
Spark by chip.
If you go to Duke, there's the BATS program, Bayesian Analysis of Time Series. You go to Cambridge, BUGS, B-U-G-S.
okay.
And then most of our students use MATLAB.
Okay.
You can write programs really on
You-
Mathematica.
Even for Bayesian analysis?
No,
Yes.
They do that
Okay.
quite readily.
You can
Most
do
of our
S plus and MATLAB together also.
MATLAB is very nice.
Okay.
If you write your own program, you know what you put in it, and you make your own mistakes.
Yes, that's right.
If you get a canned program.
It's a much better learning experience if a
Yeah.
hands-on experience are in it.
Exactly. And given your engineering background, you shouldn't have any trouble with it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, sir.
I am student of MPhil in Delhi University. As you all listen, there are a lot of problem in teaching Bayesian in India. But I want to say few words which are very famous in Hindi literature. कौन कहता है कि आसमान में छेद नहीं हो सकता? कौन कहता है कि आसमान में छेद नहीं हो सकता? एक पत्थर तो तबीयत से उछालो यार. And that's it.
Well, that is German, yes, but please.
Base is great.
But I think it's this spirit, what is really trying to tell us that I think if there is a will, there is a way.
Yeah.
And if we really want to do it, if we want to go about teaching Bayesian method in statistics, econometrics, and marketing management in any area, if we put in the effort, we should be able to achieve that. This is what he was trying to say. Oh, well, yes.
I have one comment. I mean, usually in our programs, we have some mission statement. What do we expect after a student graduates from our department? Okay? Now, we have had, I mean, when I went to school here, and I took my master's program, at least I knew what are the avenues open to me after that, after I finished my master's program. So unless the students who come to your program know what are the avenues for them, okay, and unless you publicize those avenues, you can't attract people. And they'll go to computer science because they know there's a job out there, right? So unless the profession is over here, faculty makes an attempt to really meet together and talk about what is it we are trying to do? How do we attract the students? How do we tell them, if you love to do this kind of thing, you can learn this and then do this after you graduate, right? Unless you do that, you really can't attract people to do your program. I mean, you can complain about it, but it's not going to happen. And in this day and age, there's information out there, you got to study yourself, okay, essentially. That's what's happening all over, in the US. We get to start our own program, otherwise students don't come to us. So, you have a curriculum with long time, a lot of stuff which has been obsolete now, which was there okay at the time when you had no computers, people have spent, I mean, I did my competition using that, really turn the crank, okay, exactly, right. So, that stuff you can save now, that time you can save now. You can do a lot more today, and then that means you have to modernize the curriculum. That comes back to UGC basically. UGC, people who go to UGC committees have to understand that the curriculum which was there 30 years ago will not work. It got to be modernized. That means you have to say, what is statistics today? Is it the same thing what it was 30 years ago? Or has it changed or not? I mean, that's very important. I mean, if you talk about this being a science of decision making, then you have a lot of scope to change the curriculum, and then you'll have some relevant programs for students, and you'll attract students. Otherwise, what you have is, you have 4 or 5 students who have nothing else to do, or who don't know where to go basically, and they'll come to you. you will not study programs that way. Because I'm being very realistic about it. Essentially, I have seen over time, the stat was a discipline which attracted a lot of students, a lot of very good students in India. In 70s, 60s, almost every university got tons of applicants from India, with a master's program in statistics who applied for PhD program in US. Today, that's not the case. Number of students have gone down, including at ISI and Calcutta. Okay, number of students not there anymore. Why? Let's ask that question. Why is that happening? How do we change that? And unless we do that, well, 10 years down the line, probably you have 2 students, and then after all, the department will have to close down. I'm being very, very upfront because I see that unless we sell this discipline to people, it's not going to work.
He's a freshwater economist.
We'll have to learn some more.
I learned from you.
We also will have to learn some more marketing and
Exactly.
selling techniques from the management.
From the management.
Yes, that's right.
I think some.
One of the areas that is, I think, is going to become, or is already there, so-called business intelligence, which involves a lot of analysis, statistical analysis. Now I think it is catching up. So I think if programs in statistics move towards that direction, I don't know what exactly is involved, but maybe enabling students to go. I think there's be a big market for the students.
I was just mentioning in response to your remark about actuarial science. In the book we brought out honoring Di Finetti, there's an article by Bill Hickman and another person on the role of Bayesian analysis in actuarial science. It's a wonderful article. And then the actuarial the Society of Actuaries has, in the last few years, has set up an actuarial foundation that makes grants. You may apply to them to get a grant to set up your program. So if you contact the Society of Actuaries and request information about the Actuarial Foundation, they would love to finance programs here in India. They finance programs all over places.
Apart from the problem of portfolio management, which was Zellner talked about, there are 2 or 3 areas in which policymakers are very much interested. And they seem to be, at least to me, it looks like a problems in sequential decision making with a lot of uncertainty and information feedback. I'll give 2 or 3 examples where there's a lot of controversy. In agriculture, we have a crop forecast, first forecast, second forecast, third forecast, fourth forecast. The first forecast comes in July, when the area is sown. Then it comes after a month and so on. This information is very valuable for the policy maker. How much buffer stock they must have, whether to go to the foreign market to export or import, and also for the producers for inventory holdings. Therefore, the value of the information about how much output will come over a period of time. And this not only the Ministry of Agriculture is interested. I saw a study by Confederation of Indian Industry on the estimates of forecasts coming from alternative sources, including remote sensing, then also the village level records, and how good they are. Sometimes the difference is so large. The question is a repetitive information, the same thing. And now we also want to create future markets for coffee, and already the Ministry of Commerce has asked people. So they must know about the plantations, different ages, how much output will come, how do we make use of this information so that we can plan actually any contingency plan. This is one area where we have a lot of scope, and unfortunately, as far as I know, there's not much analytical work done. Professor Zellner told me about 10 years back one article on the application of a sequential decision making in agriculture model, Bentley. The various stages of agriculture operation. Each stage you have the information up to the point in time and then decide whether to do that. So some of these areas the policymakers are very much interested, but unfortunately we go to Cobb-Douglas production function or something like that. We don't capture all the realities. Instantaneous production function. Now I read one report on remote sensing methodology that ISRO wants us to do some economic analysis of satellite and remote sensing service. We had a long discussion. All the reports, simple standard statistical rules, without knowing or realizing that time is involved, uncertainty is involved, information changes over time. Now this is one area where I feel that the Bayesian techniques, information theory, learning, all can be blended. But I feel that this year the work has to be done by a few people who are interested at the research level before we go to textbook or something like that. I would like to have the reactions and suggestions, probably some seminar or something.
I have a suggestion in this regard. Number one, that we should try to have a directory of people who are doing Bayesian work in India. And the
Or
kind of-
related work.
Yes, so that we know exactly whom to contact if I have a problem. Number one. Number two, that those who are teaching Bayesian courses, if they have some lecture notes, maybe they can, so in the directory it can be said that he's teaching such and such course. If somebody needs, he can send a Xerox copy of those notes to the person, and that can be, instead of a book, it can be used as a guideline, yes.
Pursuing that, why not set up a worldwide website?
Yeah.
And then you can send your notes along as an attachment.
But I think at this moment, our universities are not that much well equipped to work on a website.
Oh, you can't
That's
set up a
practical
website?
Yes.
The ISI and IIM have to start with
Yes,
this.
yes.
They have the resources.
Oh.
Yes, but most of the universities don't have it.
Oh, but wouldn't there be in the major cities a center you could go to and use?
Important centers could be set up.
It's still not very
Yeah,
practical.
I think it's
I just, one thing, one is textbook, but more importantly, I find, and at least we can get textbooks or we can have access to the textbooks. What is lacking, maybe even US, I think, is a good book which lists all the applications, so that one source where I want to talk about applications and I can pick up what applications I want, there doesn't seem to be any such good books. It's like, not talking so much about the theory, but what are the issues and how it was applied and what methodology has been applied and so on. I may be wrong, but when I look for statistical applications, there are applications would be like a problem kind of thing, and they want what we want is actual applications.
Well, to some extent, the current index to statistics gives you a survey of the complete statistical literature by keywords of the title. So many times you can locate studies by going to the current index of statistics. IMS and ASA jointly publish that every year. That's a good survey of all the literature in statistics. They even cover some of the econometrics terms.
But actual applications and so on.
You have to look under keywords.
But in terms of econometrics applications, I think Journal of Business and Economic Statistics and Journal of Applied Econometrics both will have policies that lead to papers with good applications. And that book I mentioned earlier, edited by Spiegelhalter and others, Markov chain, Gilts and so on, Markov chain Monte Carlo in practice. I think that's got a lot of nice applications, and they're real applications, and their reference lists would lead on to access to other literature and so on.
Well, I'll just say a few things and then Professor Shankar perhaps could sum up. I think we do realize, I get the feeling that there's a lot of sympathy for teaching and using the Bayesian methods. So at the teaching level, we will have to have both. We really can't go straight to the application without having some feel for how the methods really work. But of course, how it should be divided between the theory and application would perhaps depend on the kind of students one gets. I think even when we were going to organize this workshop, it was kind of a very difficult task as to whether it should be really focused on econometrics, or we should have statistics, econometrics, and application. But of course, we hope that we would be able to have a good mix of people and try to organize programs which are, which address both questions, theory and application. And it seems to me, other than ISI, IIM, and IITs, that we really need to have some special fund set up, special center set up for the study of Bayesian methods. In fact, that's really one ultimate goal towards which I think Mohan and I have been working. That other than just having these 1-week workshops, that if we could really have a special center for study of Bayesian methods and decision making, which would, well, the decision making is the part which perhaps will attract the industry and the applications, and who should be able to fund this kind of program. And this is where we are really working towards it, and I'm sure your feedback to how this program is organized and the need for these kind of programs to your respective departments, and of course letting us know about it. And all this, and I'm sure Professor Shankar, who is actually on the several Government of India committees and the UGC committees, and who has access to the ministry where it would be, or even Professor Rao, who perhaps can introduce some of these kinds of programs in the management institutes. I think this kind of initiative would lead us to this ultimate goal of applying the most intuitive, most appealing method. And I go back to finish with the sentence, it pays to go ways, and I hope we can make the world convinced about it, that it really works that way.
Any comment from panel members?
I just want to add one more information to people here. Way back in 1996-97, we formed a Bayesian group in India, and K Ghosh and all these people were involved in it. And we became the first Indian chapter of the International Society for Bayesian Analysis, our group. And we publish a newsletter twice a year. It is published from BHU. So that is one way we are trying to pass on what we have to the general public, persons who are interested. So maybe that kind of activity can be, broadened and introduce Bayesian econometrics and kind of thing. And so larger group is there, more information is passed on and kind of thing. So for example, every issue I read a book and give what's given in that book, so that people get to know that there is a new book and there is something which could be useful for researchers and kind of thing. So I think that kind of activity, if possible, we can introduce IIM people's ISM, and then do that. So that's one thing.
Well, it's a second Bansal's suggestion. The chapter, the ISPA chapter here in India has been very active, and their newsletter is a fine newsletter. So if you're not a member, you should become a member and get that newsletter. A lot of good information in the newsletter.
Summary. Well, yeah, I wanted to mention that I think it's a good idea of having a website with all the information. Maybe we can use ISPA, the ISPA meeting next year, to promote this idea, especially for areas which are not in Europe and in North America, which they have better access. But I think the whole teaching in future will change because of all the internet access. And I think it will be much more easier also with the internet printing that everybody has his own manuscripts, and then you just download it or get it shipped when you start a course.
Here in Bangalore, is it hard to get on the web?
No, it's
There you are.
actually, with some bit of luck, perhaps the whole workshop would have been covered, but we thought we would do it next time.
So as you know, the address of the ISPA is www.bayesian.org. And you go there, you get a lot of information about Bayesian matters.
And I would support any movement toward the Bayesian Bangalore Center. The next
BBC.
Yes.
BBC.
BBC in India.
He's in any case been made half Indian, so we have a special right to it.
Yeah, and I hope it will not take another 12 years to get another workshop. Maybe sooner.
We thank all the eminent speakers and all the participants for a very fruitful discussion. I hope we lost some follow. Thank you very much.